Good evening. I'm Peter Larman. I'm a member of the National Council of Elders and a part of the King in Breaking Silence team, and I am thrilled about this particular program and about the subject of taking courage in the face of fear. We've heard a lot from our panelists tonight and all our presenters about what's going on, about continuity, about finding courage in community. It's inseparable. And and it's our special privilege to welcome Eric Stoner, who's really been on the front line of understanding this and propelling it forward through an organization that, if you haven't heard of, you will hear of, you must hear of, called Waging Nonviolence, Nonviolence at the Heart. Eric is an editor and co-founder. And Eric, I'd like to invite you to just open up um, some reasons to be glad that although it may not appear in the mainstream or lamestream media accounts that are all about capitulation and cowardice, there's a lot of courage out there. There are a lot of people who are finding each other and creating hope by what they're doing. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think the a lot of people have the impression that there isn't a lot happening, that people are just kind of taking all of these attacks from the Trump and Musk administration. But when you actually look closely at what's going on, as we've been doing at Waging Nonviolence, I think you get a very different story. And even for me, paying close attention to this, I've been shocked and kind of pleasantly surprised by the immediate response that we have had to Trump coming back into power. I think it's not taking the form that a lot of people might imagine. They think back to 2017 and think of the Women's March and millions of people in the street. And I think that's how most people think it should look. And that is not what it has looked like so far. But I think that actually might be for good reason. That what we've found is that there's actually a lot more protest happening this time around than there was back in 2017. It's just taking the form of more localized, targeted, kind of diverse tactics, kind of different ways of approaching this that I think are actually more strategic and I think will be more impactful than having kind of the large symbolic kind of actions that we saw the first time around. So Erica Chenoweth, we published a story by Erica Chenoweth and a couple of their colleagues that actually crunched the numbers on what has happened over the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And kind of to my surprise, the numbers are significant. There's been more than twice as many protests this time around as there was in 2017. They've been more frequent, and they're also using much more diverse tactics, which I think is really, like I said, encouraging, especially moving into kind of economic non-cooperation and non-compliance, which I think can be very, very powerful. You saw that with the move towards different forms of economic boycott. On February 28th, there was a big national boycott that I didn't get a lot of press, again, in the mainstream media. But when you actually look at least some of the polling around it, even Forbes magazine found a poll that something like 16% of people said they participated in this. If that's even close to true, that would be tens of millions of people that were actively participating in this boycott. And there are many other boycotts planned. I think it can be more strategic and more organized, but I think it was a sign that a lot of people care and a lot of people want to do something and are trying to figure out how they can have an impact. So I find a lot of hope and kind of, hope in what has already happened, right?
And Eric, I know people are curious about this. I'm curious about how all of this growing power from below is networked. I know you all function as a kind of a wire service for nonviolent activity in pretty much every arena. But to have collective power, mass collective power, people kind of need to know about one another's struggles and support one another's struggles. How does that work, the networking and the collaboration part work?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of ways that people are finding each other. Online, a lot of people have migrated, for example, to Blue Sky as an alternative to Twitter, and I think are finding their people there. That's one way that there's a lot of interaction right now. We're definitely seeing that. But I think like offline, people are finding it more in their local neighborhoods and communities, right? I think that's a good place to start, right? That there are groups in every community, I believe, that are already working on the issues that you care about, and it's a matter of finding them, and people then learning that not to stay in their own silos for their one particular issue, but finding ways to come together because we need to build the kind of mass movement like we haven't seen to really stop what's happening. And I do think that is happening. But there are the kind of groups that have been around for a while that people can kind of plug into, like Indivisible has really exploded again, hundreds of new chapters around the country. There are groups like 5051 that have organized protests across the country. There's the upcoming action on April 5th, right? That there are, looks like hundreds of protests, maybe thousands happening around the country. So those are easy ways that you can find maybe local formations that are already working on issues that you might care about to plug in. And I do think people are learning that, yeah, we need to all come together, even if you are particularly focused on one thing, like the environment or stopping cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, but that we really need to all come together right now. And I think that there are signs that that's already beginning to happen.
Other thoughts about courage and movement building right now at this crucial time, April 2025, spirit of Dr. King, standing up when, not many people were standing up at that time against the Vietnam War, and in the end, adding unbelievable force and moral force to that work and linking it to the Black liberation struggle.
Yeah, I've been very impressed by the courage that immigrants and migrants and their allies have shown in the last couple months. That is, to me, has been one of the most impressive forms of action and resistance that has taken place, right? That there have been just massive protests around the country to support immigrants right now that are facing these very serious threats of deportation and violence. And they are such a vulnerable population, and the idea that they can go out into the streets and risk arrest and block roads, and there have been strikes and stay-at-home strikes by farm workers who are some of the people that are suffering the most in this country, right? That they can find the courage to take action in a moment like this. Is if they can do it, anyone should be able to do that, right? So I've been very, very impressed by that. And again, it's, I think having an impact. The border czar has said that it's been very difficult to find people to deport because so many people are being trained, right, in knowing their rights and things like this, that, to me, I think we should look to the courage that is already being shown by some of these communities and kind of take inspiration from that and feel like we need to step up, right? Also thinking of the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil and the Tufts student more recently, and how that, even though I think students and people that have been speaking out around Palestine, these are acts that are meant to strike fear and to create silence. And the fact that the immediate response from local communities and from these people that are being directly targeted was to take to the streets and say, this is not okay. And, that they have not let this go quietly, I think is very impressive and is exactly the kind of spirit and response that we need to moments like this.